I watched a movie called The Woman in the Yard. I was convinced that this was the lowest we could possibly sink for horror films by the title alone, but it's a Blumhouse film, which means it's going to make money no matter what, and I went yesterday, and it was a sold-out theater, basically. I had to sit in the front row. Do you understand how mad I was? I was sitting there steaming. I have had no problems for any release over the last 6 months, no matter how big. Yet somehow the fucking Woman in the Yard at 10:30 p.m., I can't get out of the front row loony bin. I'm just sitting there breaking my neck staring straight up at it like I'm trying to catch a fucking golden shower with my mouth open. For The Woman in the Yard, I was livid. My eggs were scrambled. I sat there with my arms crossed pouting by the time the movie started. Which, it's not the movie's fault. I mean, good for The Woman in the Yard. It's putting asses in seats somehow. That shit is selling tons and tons. I bet it's gonna make a fucking fortune off of like a, like $12 million budget or something, I imagine. Because Blumhouse, all they do is like really low budget horror films, so everything is a profit. I've said that is the smartest model, and I don't know why more Hollywood studios don't follow that model. They only ever make money. No matter how catastrophic or how boring, lazy, or generic it is, you make a low-budget horror film, you're going 3x on your budget plus marketing. So I have no doubt The Woman in the Yard is going to follow suit, especially considering the turnout I saw for it yesterday, which I am still stunned by. This had more movement than the Halo 3 midnight launch. I don't know what people are seeing in the trailer for The Woman in the Yard that makes them think it's going to be good. It's not. I thought at best it would be fun bad. It's not. It's just boring. It's not even bad, per se. It's not like a horrible film. It's not terrible, but it's not good. So it doesn't get to have the luxury of being enjoyably stinky. It just is mediocre, which I think is the ultimate sin. Because again, you can be bad and charming and memorable and enjoyable, or you can just be good. But if you're neither, you go right down in purgatory and you're forgettable and boring, and I feel like I wasted my time watching it. I want to give you my review, though. As the title would indicate, there is a woman in the yard, almost immediately. They name drop the title within the first, 10 minutes. So, the story is about a family that's going through a loss. The mother and father were in a car accident which claimed the life of the husband. However, the mother survived and is overcome with a lot of trauma, and the family still is, of course, feeling the loss of the father. It's only been a couple of weeks since that accident, and when they were downstairs eating, one of the kids, named Taylor, said, "Hey Mom, there's a woman in the yard." So the mother goes and checks, and sure enough, there's a fucking woman in the yard. So, as you've seen in the trailer, it's a woman sitting in a chair in the yard. So, the title did not lie. It is not false advertising. You get what you pay for right away. You get a woman in the yard, and she is posting up. She is slabbed up in the middle of the yard, and it's odd because she's dressed like it's like morning attire. It's very weird and concerning. So the mother goes and checks, and of course the mother is going through a rough time, and she's taking all of her anger and frustration out on her kids. She is miserable. And she goes out. She still has an injured leg from the car accident, so she's on crutches, and she goes out. So she says, "Hey, why are you sitting in the yard, lady?" And this leads to a short and odd conversation between the two of them, with the woman in the yard eventually revealing some blood in her hands. And that's when the mom goes, "Jeepers, this is a threat now. This woman in the yard is dangerous," so she goes back inside, locks all the doors, and it turns out her chickens have been slaughtered by the woman in the yard. So, do you care about spoilers? My guess is probably not. I'm going to get into spoilers so I can tell you why I think the movie's pretty fucking boring. So you have been warned. I'm going to get into spoilers for The Woman in the Yard. But before I do that, I will say there are a couple of things I actually think are pretty solid about the film. There are some really good shots, and I do mean that. There are some actually good shots in here that I did not expect from The Woman in the Yard. They had really cool shots, especially when it came to a certain sequence that involved glass, and the powers of the woman in the yard, I think, look cool and are at least something different than you usually see in horror films, and got pretty creative with it. I also think the acting was good, particularly from the mother. So, it's all the good stuff out of the way. Now, into the spoilers. This movie is the epitome of that SpongeBob meme. He's just standing there menacingly. That is the whole film. There is nothing that happens outside of the family bickering. The mother is terrible to her kids. She is going through some horrible things, and she is taking it out on her family. The entire, I'd say 70% of the film is focused on her being mean to her kids, and one of her kids, Taylor, kind of talking back and being like, Mom, you're not acting like yourself. And the mom's like throwing glass on the floor, even throws something at her kids. And then that's like the bulk of the film. Meanwhile, they'll just keep looking out the window and noticing the woman in the yard is getting closer. So that's it. There's not really scares. There's just occasional loud noises, but no scares. Eventually, as the woman in the yard gets closer, the kid, Taylor, decides to take matters into his own hands because his mother is completely incapable of protecting them at all. She has, like, no survival instincts. So, like, the power has been off all day, so they haven't been able to, like, call for help. The mother's phone is not charged, so they also can't call for help there. The Jeep battery is dead, so they can't go and, like, scram and get out of there. But Taylor is constantly coming up with other solutions. Like, okay, so the power's not working, we can't call for help. Well, what if we just start running to the neighbors to call for help to get this woman in the yard out of here because she's scaring us? And she's like, no, you can't do that. And it's like, well, why the fuck not? She's just sitting in the yard. We've established she's not going anywhere. This kid could easily run to the neighbors, which he says he can do. He even said I could drive the car there. But she's like, no, you will not drive the car. And it turns out the car is dead. But, like, he's the only one offering solutions. He's like, okay, I'm going to get Dad's gun and I'll shoot her. And she's like, no, you will not do that. And it's like, what the fuck? He's the only one with any sense in the whole film. Now, of course, I think that's the point, because, big spoiler here, the whole film is about the mother and what she's gone through with the trauma after losing her husband in a car accident that she feels she is responsible for. That's the big twist. So the woman in the yard mentioned during their conversation she had been summoned by the mother. The mother's confused on what it meant. And then we get to the last half of this film. So now we see the woman in the yard. She's standing up from her chair. Now she's using her powers, and her powers are shadow manipulation. And there's some cool shots with this, where she has, like, her arm as a shadow reaching up and she hits a wind chime for a scare. Or she's using her shadows in the house to pick up things and throw them around, which I think is the most cliche shit ever. I am so tired of that fucking horror movie trope where things just move around like, ooh, spooky, moving fucking plates and shit. But at least using the shadow powers to do it was cool looking. It really reminded me of Courage the Cowardly Dog with that episode where, like, the shadows fight each other. I love that. I love Courage the Cowardly Dog, and I can always find ways of tying it into movies I watch because Courage just had so much good shit to it. So it did remind me of that. But the shadows were a cool idea, and there was some creativity there where they started closing blinds in order to take away shadows so she couldn't use it. Like, it was good ideas that really feel worthless in a movie like this, unfortunately. So anyway, after she starts demonstrating her powers and they start countering it by getting rid of the shadows, it then goes into, like, a totally separate movie after they end up in the attic. After they've run away from the shadows and they're up in the attic. Where it just becomes a fucking totally different movie. It gets so trippy and surreal. It has, like, time-altering elements where the mother, like, she starts going to, like, the past where her husband is there, and we get to, like, see that, and it's like a happily ever after thing, but it turns out it's like the mirror dimension, so everything's like flipped. Then she comes back to reality, but now she's the woman in the yard, so she's sitting in the chair. So now we're seeing the movie play out in front of her as the woman in the chair from her perspective. Like, these are cool ideas and they look cool, but it doesn't fit with the rest of the film that's just been established. It just comes out of nowhere. Like, it seems like what happened is they had the woman in the yard and they want it to be like this really formulaic, throwaway, dog shit horror film. And then the director's like, this sucks. I really want to try something. They're like, okay, as long as we just get some tickets, some asses and seats, just put it to the end of the movie. Who cares? So he decided to get experimental. And I appreciate what he tried to do, but I just don't think it works for the movie. What ends up happening is the woman in the yard is there because the mother wants to end her own life. She's going through so much grief and she feels like her kids are going to be so much better off without her. So the woman in the yard is there to help her do that. And that's where you get to the ending of the film where she has like a gun to her head and the woman in the yard's like helping her pull the trigger to end her own life. And then she doesn't. She walks away, her kids come back, and it's happily ever after. But then it turns to one of the pictures and her name, Ramona, is backwards. Thus, the implication is she did take her own life and now she's in the mirror dimension of the happily ever after that's not real. It's a very bleak ending and it takes a lot of fucking balls to do that. So ultimately the message of the movie is she couldn't move on from her grief, thought her kids would be better off without her, so she shoots herself in the head. It's a pretty crazy message to send, really. And I can at least appreciate it tried to do something at the end here, but it takes the last 15 minutes and just crams so much shit all at once. Tons of different ideas, different imagery, all overloading you in like 10 minutes. it just doesn't mesh with the rest of the movie. So overall, Woman in the Yard is not a good movie, but it's also not a terrible film either. I really think it's just a boring film at the end of the day. That had some good ideas, it had some clever moments, it had some good acting, but it didn't really do anything. And it's hardly even a horror film in the first place. So yeah, overall, not a great movie. I just wanted to give you the little review on it. That's about it. There's a lot you could say about this film, but one thing that you can never criticize it for is that it lied to you. There was a fucking woman in that yard for over an hour doing nothing. That's pretty cool. That's about it. So yeah. Sometimes I like to cover topics that I'm confident 90% of the planet has never even heard of, and I know 100% of the planet does not care about. So buckle in. Buckle your seatbelt. This is going to be a bit of a wild ride for us, because I find this to be such an interesting topic. It's about a movie that was not only so catastrophic and a box office disaster, but it was so bad that a beloved director who's directed some hits like Die Hard, Predator, Hunt for Red October, Last Action Hero, and then from the deepest, stinkiest part of his bowels, he pooped out something so blasphemous and unholy that it completely ruined his career, and he has not had a movie since. Kind of. He had like one other movie after this came out, but it was already finished at the time from what I understand. But not only was it so bad that he has basically been excommunicated from Hollywood, there was so much like espionage and conspiracy shit behind the scenes on the production of this that he also spent a whole year in jail. This is the story of Rollerball 2002. Show of hands. How many of you have heard of or, God forbid, seen Rollerball 2002? Put your hand down, I know you're lying. Don't you ever try to fib to me again, liars go to hell. 2002 Rollerball is a film I watched growing up that I thought was just the bee's knees. I thought this shit slapped. It's the remake of a 1975 film, which is based on a book. And I thought it was amazing when I was a kid. And when I was talking about it on stream, I was shocked to learn that most people didn't share that sentiment. It has a 3% on Rotten Tomatoes, with many considering it the worst remake ever made. And for its time in the early 2000s was one of the most catastrophic flops. This was a bigger flop than My Meat Onto Your Mother's Chin. This is a film that does have a bit of a sour legacy. And last night I decided to rewatch it for the first time in 2 decades. Holy shit, this movie is incredibly bad. So before getting into how this landed the director in jail, let's go ahead and give you a review of the film. Now, what I wanted to do is like play you clips from Rollerball and talk about it and joke about it, kind of like how Danny Gonzalez does it. But the last time I tried this formula, I ended up getting a strike on my channel from the Max Steel movie. So I don't know how Danny Gonzalez gets away with it. Maybe he's made a deal with the devil. I haven't a clue, but I'm not going to risk it again. So instead, I'm just going to talk to you about Rollerball 2002. Now, first and foremost, I don't think it's a fun, bad movie. It's kind of a slog. I think the intro, like the first 20-ish minutes, is charming. Like, actually charming. Because it's this perfect encapsulation of the late 90s, early 2000s extreme era attitude. You know, fucking Stone Cold Steve Austin beating Vince McMahon in the hospital with a bedpan. You know, The Undertaker throwing Mankind McFoley off the top of Hell in a Cell. It takes that and it folds it into this universe where there's an extreme new sport called rollerball. And I promise you, rollerball is the worst sport any human being is capable of cooking up. It's like an affront to imagination entirely. It is insulting. This is a sport made by someone that has never watched a sport in their life. So, to sum it up, it's like this tiny mini golf-sized arena where you have 2 people on motorcycles, 1 for each team, and then everyone else on roller blades, and like a steel ball gets shot through, and you have to pick up the ball, and you have to do like 2 figure eights, and then you have to jump up onto the rabbit hole, they call it, which is basically just a high diving board. So you jump up onto the rabbit hole, and then you drop down, and then once you do that and complete that lap, then you are eligible to score the rollerball, which you score by taking it, and there's a giant metal saucer, like a giant metal colander, and you take it and you throw it at it. And keep in mind, the size of the arena is like the size of my room. And the extreme nature is there's motorcycles. I shit you not. That's the only thing that makes it extreme. And of course you can like bump and hit people. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of roller derby before. It kind of borrows a lot of that DNA, but then makes it 20 times as lame. So you have these men and women on rollerblades and on these motorcycles, and the whole thing is you do this and you do that to try and prevent them from doing 2 laps and then doing this. By far, the worst part of this movie is having to watch them play that sport. It's about as extreme as me plugging my grandfather's nose when he was sleeping and then run away when he wakes up angry. It sucks, and it takes up such a large percentage of this film. It deserves the 3% for that alone. And it tries so hard to be cool and edgy, so it's got like the rock music. They have like a band on, like, built into the sport too. And they'll play like the Rob Zombie. There's a Slipknot performance in there. Pink's in here too. And it's just so lame. And they also try and just like put titties in here. So there's just scenes of boobies out, like a bunch of breasts sometimes for no reason. But they even try and get quirky with the perkies. So they'll have like these breasts in like these almost futuristic sci-fi outfits. But if it's sci-fi written by like the weirdo Gooner. So like one of the scenes, all the women have like this like military uniform on, but the nipple and areolas are cut out of it. So you just see like their nipples and areolas in the uniform for some reason. It's odd. The whole movie, it really feels like it's made by the most uncool person ever trying to figure out what it means to be cool. And they just keep fishing around in the dark, not finding it. I was just surprised I didn't see more trench coats. I saw tons of sunglasses, just not nearly as many trench coats as I was expecting. But anyway, most of the film you're watching rollerball matches, which super fucking suck. You might as well just be watching like an ant farm. It's terrible, and it's filmed horribly. It's like 55 cuts just watching Jonathan Cross do this on his roller skates. It's, oh man, it is miserable. So the plot is about rollerball is the biggest sport in the world right now. It's making millions of dollars, and the whole thing is the elites of rollerball want to keep people hooked on gambling with it. That's how they're making all of their money, is through everyone gambling on rollerball. So they have to keep people's interest hooked. And the way they do that is by basically starting to purposefully rig the game to have people getting injured, to increase the stakes. Like the more blood, the better kind of thing. And Jonathan Cross and his team, they catch wind of this, and they don't like being killed. They don't like being treated like, you know, not athletes, but instead just fodder for the ratings. Which conceptually is a decent idea, and I imagine in the book that concept is explored pretty well. It is not here at all. Also, the main bad guy looks like Nosferatu. Now, I bet you're wondering, what does this movie do when it's not just showing you rollerball matches? And the answer is nothing. So Jonathan Cross is having a fling with the motorcyclist on his team. What is her name? I think it's Black Widow, maybe. I don't remember. But they're like in love with each other, but they're keeping it under wraps because Jonathan Cross is the face of rollerball. He is the Tom Brady of rollerball, and Nosferatu is basically rigging it so all of his team keeps getting hurt to kind of force him to be like the angriest man in the sport, so people keep getting hooked. Like the superstar, he's getting mad and now he's getting even more violent type thing. Now when they're not showing you the rollerball stuff, it's Jonathan, Black Widow, and then LL Cool J's character. They're upset about, you know, like all of their teammates getting injured because like in one of them, the opposing team was instructed by Nosferatu and the bad guys to hit one of their teammates with the rollerball, and so they blast him in the jaw, and you're like, oh! So they blast him in the jaw, and then they start to piece it together. So then, when they're not playing rollerball, they're trying to figure out, how do we get out of this? They never figure it out. Eventually, LL Cool J and Jonathan Cross try and make it across the border. They don't make it. LL Cool J gets sniped and just dies on the spot, in probably the most anticlimactic death I have ever seen in a film. Because he was like in a lot of the scenes, because LL Cool J was a huge character here. And when he tries to make it to the border and Jonathan Cross is watching, Nosferatu just has his henchman snipe him. He just goes, all right, now shoot him. So he shoots him, he falls off the bike, and he's dead. They don't even have Jonathan Cross ever like mention him again. He is immediately forgotten entirely. There are so many scenes I would like to show you so we can laugh about it together, but like I said, I don't want to risk getting a strike for fucking Rollerball 2002. So instead, I'll just fast forward this review here because who gives a fuck? The movie ends with Jonathan in his final match where they decided Jonathan knows too much, he already tried to run, let's give him his retirement match, where they're basically just going to have the other team kill him. So they like sharpen their sticks, they have like these little scoopers, like these pooper scoopers for the ball. I think they're for the ball. They actually never utilize them except for the final scene where they have these giant fucking Q-tips that are sharp. So they start like slashing with it and Jonathan's bleeding. Jonathan starts just fighting them. The crowd's cheering, Jonathan! Jonathan! Do it! Jonathan! So he's fighting the other team. And then eventually he like overcomes the big roided out bad guy. Basically this world's Bane he beats in like this 1v1 fist fight. And then even the other team starts to rebel with Jonathan. So they all fight back against Nosferatu and the bad guys. And Jonathan grabs the rollerball and he does a flying drop kick through the glass, hitting Nosferatu. And then he throws the rollerball at one of the guys with a gun. He takes him out and then he goes and delivers the 1-2 buckle my shoe knuckle sandwich to the other guy, taking him out. And then he goes and he kills Nosferatu. And then one of the other guys that was Nosferatu's right hand is like, when you kill a tyrant, you got to make sure to do a deal with his successor. That's me. So he pulls out his gun and Jonathan says, I've got more work to do. So then he shoots him with a shotgun, killing him. Roll credits. That's how it ends. Pretty exhilarating stuff. Now, the movie's bad. Yes. Is it a 3% bad? Yes. Did it deserve its huge flop? Yes. Now let's move on to the most interesting part about this story. How did the director, John McTiernan, land himself in jail for this? And in order to tell that story, I need to set the stage a bit, because the history of this Rollerball remake actually has a pretty tumultuous past. So initially the remake script focused on the thematic ideas of the original and fleshing them out more and going deeper on it. However, John McTiernan didn't like that idea. He had titties on the mind. He said, nope, we're throwing this out, we need more melons. So McTiernan threw out that other script, wiped his whole asshole with it, and instead opted for a script that was far more straightforward and much more about mindless action and being sexy. That was like the big thing. And when they did it for test screenings, it was not received very well. So in a panic, they recut the movie, they even redid the whole ending, and they Frankenstein together this PG-13 cut, which I'm really surprised about because what I watched on Amazon could not have been PG-13. There were a lot of honkers out. I feel like maybe this version on Amazon is the original R-rated version, and what hit theaters was PG-13. I don't know. I haven't even bothered to look at that because who gives a fuck? But regardless, what happened is they did redo a lot of it for a PG-13 rating. And it bombed. Everybody hated it. For obvious reasons. It's not a good movie at all. So with all of this turmoil internally, there was a big disagreement between the director, John McTiernan, and the producer, Charles Roven, about where this vision goes. And McTiernan became convinced that Roven was making an effort to sabotage his vision, so he turned to an infamous Hollywood fixer, which I guess is like, I don't know, the Pinkertons for Hollywood? I guess like a fucking assassin or something, named Anthony Pellicano, to investigate Roven, to, I guess, confirm his conspiracy that Roven was actively working against him. So Anthony Pellicano wiretapped Roven. Also, he was apparently arrested by the FBI for countless guns and explosives in his office. According to the court, McTiernan hoped he would discover dirt on Roven, especially him speaking negatively about studio execs. When Roven caught wind of the scheme and retained an attorney to investigate, McTiernan repeatedly misled or outright lied to authorities during various investigations, depositions, and hearings, and the repeated behavior shaped him into someone that the court deemed unwilling to take the matter seriously, and after multiple appeals and extensions over a period of 7 years, the director was sentenced to 1 year in federal prison. He served most of the time in the facility, but was eventually granted house arrest for the final month. And since Rollerball, he's only had one movie come out called Basic, which I believe he had already done before going to jail for the Rollerball espionage. Meanwhile, Charles Roven is wiggling his finger to the tune of an Academy Award for Best Picture for his work on Oppenheimer. Looking like Roven took home the W from this whole Rollerball 2002 debacle. However, John McTiernan did just recently, like a week or so ago, make an appearance at a film festival where they were showing Last Action Hero. And from what I've read, he has wanted to come back to directing. But no one wants to work with him after what happened with Rollerball. I couldn't believe how deep the lore on Rollerball 2002 went when I made just an offhanded comment about it on stream. I don't even remember what brought it up, but I mentioned Rollerball and how much I thought the movie was cool or something to that effect, and then it turns out it has all of this under the hood. Fucking crazy. Also, the movie does super suck, so it does deserve the 3%. Do I think it's the worst remake ever made? I don't know, there's so many bad remakes these days, it's hard to say. But it is trash, that's for sure. I don't know if we'll see John McTiernan return to directing anytime soon. It has been over 20 years now, so I think there's a good chance that, he might be suited for a comeback pretty soon. Especially with how desperate Hollywood is getting these days, I do think there is a chance we see him rise again, because he does have some of the most iconic late 80s, early 90s movies under his belt. So, I guess we'll see, but anyway, I just wanted to talk about this a bit. That's it. See ya. Have you even heard of Electric State? I'm yawning because I just finished watching it. I imagine you haven't heard of Electric State, but you probably have heard of $320 million. What if I told you that was the budget for this film? It's diabolical to be spending $320 million on a movie that has less hype than Big Chungus right now. The only reason I even heard any peeps about this film is because a lot of people mentioned this absurd budget, and also that it's just not a good movie either. It has like a 17% on Rotten Tomatoes, with most critics getting their weenies out and spit roasting it. Now, I finished it, so I'll give you a review on it, but I have, multiple times now, ranted and raved about how preposterous these budgets have become for movies that don't warrant it whatsoever. Like Borderlands, for example. And this has to be a scam, right? There has to be some kind of, dirty dealings, money laundering, something. Because after watching this, I truly cannot understand where this money went. Chris Pratt is in it, so maybe he took, a fourth of the budget just to have him in it. I have no idea, but if I was an accountant working for Netflix right now, you might find me trying to drown myself in the bathtub, because this is just outrageous. It's criminal. $320 million for a stinker of this caliber. It doesn't make sense. The numbers don't add up. It's directed by Joe and Anthony Russo of Marvel fame, and I think maybe Netflix thought they were going to get their own Avengers movie, but what they got instead was the Assvengers here. Not the most creative of insults, but this movie has sapped my neurons right now. They're not firing on all cylinders. Now, I learned from stream that Electric State is actually based on a graphic novel. I don't know how expensive it was to get the rights to do that, but by far the best part about this movie is the robot design. The robots look amazing. I'm actually a huge fan of the way the robots look, and really the whole world that's here is a really interesting one. If only it told an interesting story. Maybe it cost $150 million to get the rights to adapt this graphic novel, and they had no budget left for writers, but it is inexcusable. Why would you have this much of a budget and allocate none of it to the the most important part of a movie? The story. Giving the viewer a reason to get invested and care. Because there is none of that here at all. It is so flat. It is a slog to get through. It tells the most generic story we have seen no less than 100 times before. No deviations from the formula whatsoever. Within the first 15 minutes, you know how the whole movie is going to play out and exactly how it's going to end. And it doesn't care. It's unapologetic about that. Which I could almost excuse if the journey there was enjoyable, but it's not. Is it a 17% on Rotten Tomatoes bad? No, not quite. I'd probably put it around the 30% ballpark-ish, and that's mainly just because it is really carried by the robots. I just think they're very cool. But they don't get utilized at all. They have like your really generic monologues about, well, we're alive and we want to be treated as if we're alive. And of course that's like the central conflict, because after a war that broke out between humans and robots, there was a treaty that was signed that was really not in favor of the robots, and now the world is in a post-war state where everyone's basically got, if any of you have seen this movie with Bruce Willis, surrogates, where they jack in and they're jacked into a robot. Except they don't look like humans, it is just a robot that they control remotely, while their human counterpart just kind of rots away, gets fat and yucky and gross. And that's become like a mainstay of civilization post-war. And we follow Millie Bobby Brown's character, who was in a car accident where she lost her whole family, but they don't give a fuck about the parents. Instead, it's all about the brother that she lost in the car accident, because he was a super genius, turbo Einstein brainiac. And now, does anyone give a fuck about spoilers? I was going to avoid spoilers, but anyone care? Anybody? I'm hearing crickets. I'm going to guess not. She finds out her brother didn't actually die in that car crash. The creators of that technology with the Neurocaster, where they're jacking into the robots, and it's how they were able to beat the robots in the war. Well, the whole reason they were able to do that is because after that car accident, they kidnapped her brother because they noticed he was really smart. So now he powers the entire company. Everything, like the entire company infrastructure, runs through his brain while they keep him comatose in like a vegetative state. However, there was a little open door in the mainframe that allowed him to, like, I don't know, shoot his consciousness into a nearby robot, which is based on his favorite cartoon. And once he takes control of that robot, he escapes, finds his sister, and the two of them work together to try and get back to his body and save him. And they meet Chris Pratt and his little robot friend along the way. And they're hunted by Giancarlo Esposito, who's the Butcher. He kills robots. The plot goes almost exactly how you expect. They end up at the surviving robots zone, and they learn these robots are kind of good guys. So they team up to try and take down the bad guys. It's not good. What's really interesting, though, is how there's pretty much no comedy at all in the movie. Like, there's some jokes here and there, but they suck. I thought going into it, it was going to try and be more humorous, especially given, like, the silly concept, because all the robots are basically fucking mascots. Like, the leader of the robots is Mr. Peanut. So I thought it was going to, like, not take itself super seriously, but it really does. Pretty surprising, given the Russos' history with their usage of comedy. I guess they really wanted to try and turn a new leaf, and this was definitely not the right movie to attempt that in. Tell you that much, that's for damn sure. Would the movie have been saved by some zingers flying here and there with gut-busting laughs? Probably not. Still would have been an extremely boring movie that had nothing to offer beyond just a really cool, underutilized world. So it wouldn't have really changed too much, but at least it would have spruced it up a bit to the point where it wasn't so mind-numbing. There's really not a whole lot of reason to even dive into a thorough review here. It is the most by-the-numbers shit imaginable, which is even more head-scratching given the budget. Why spend $320 million to make the same movie that gets made for $60 million every other week? What do you gain? You only stand to lose a ton of money. That's just a bad investment. It literally does the same shit that tons of other movies do for a fraction of the cost. I don't understand what Netflix is really aiming for here. They're also not really advertising it. I hadn't heard anything about it other than people dunking on it for being bad and extremely expensive. Like, who is in charge of their finance department there? I really do not get it. I also just really don't know who the target audience is for this movie in the first place, because it's a movie that's clearly aimed for all ages, because it's not, you know, like, the action doesn't have people getting their fucking skull ripped off or anything. There's no foul language, no bad words. Like, I think there's, like, hell said once, and I think they said shit once that I remember. So, like, it's a movie that's clearly for all ages, but I don't think kids would really care to watch it, because All of like the recognizable brands here are ones that I don't think kids will ever recognize. Like, there's no Fortnite representation or anything. There's no fucking Minecraft Steve bot. Like, I don't think kids are gonna be going crazy like, Mom, look, it's the Planters peanut. Like, I don't see that happening. It also like relies heavily on like the early 90s aesthetic, which again, kids weren't alive for. Like, I don't think they're gonna care. And also, like, when there is action or anything at all happening, it's really lame. So, like, one of the robots uses a slingshot to shoot gumballs, or at least what I think is gumballs, at the bad guys that come in with their robot suits and their guns. And their guns are basically, they just shoot, like, a couple beams of electricity. But, like, he shoots gumballs at him, and then the guys with the robots are like, oh! Which is super weird. Like, clearly that's aimed at, like, a kid, you know, like slipping on a banana peel type shit. Millie Bobby Brown's weapon is a paintball gun, which how the fuck would that ever defeat these robots? She's shooting them with a paintball gun and they're going, ah, 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 and then they'll die because they freak out and like end up killing themselves. Like, it's clearly aimed at a younger audience, but I don't see why a younger audience would like this movie or choose to watch it. Anyway though, just another huge waste of money. Definitely don't think it was worth $320 million to pump into this. That's really about it. So yeah, you read the title, you're a little upset. I understand, but if I may, let me feed you some warm milk and bounce you on my lap to simmer you down so I can defend my opinion on Bong Joon-ho's newest movie, Mickey 17. I feel like most of you know this by now, I'm a huge fan of his work. In particular, no surprise, Parasite. It's one of my favorite movies ever. I couldn't stop glazing this film when it came out. My nuts were running on empty, dangerously so. I love that movie. I also love Bong Joon-ho. I think he is one of the better directors with an unbelievable amount of talent delivering really memorable, unique pieces. Bong Joon-ho and banger goes together like peanut butter and jelly. But that being said, I think Mickey 17 is his weakest work so far. I don't think it's bad, not by any means. I don't think this is a bad movie. I did still enjoy the film. I think the visuals are top notch. I love what they did with the sound, especially when it came to the aliens. Like, there was a lot to like about this movie and a lot that I did like about this movie. I just also happen to think that it's Bong Joon-ho's weakest film so far. I think there's a lot of elements in this film that didn't work super well and kind of led to it being a bit disjointed and messy. So, let's just get into it. First and foremost, I really like Robert Pattinson in this movie. I think he did an extraordinary job. He has become one of my favorite actors, which that's like the coldest take imaginable. Most people have been really suckling on that Robert Pattinson bosom. Like, he is the truth. Like, that man is an unbelievable actor, choosing some really fun roles. And he does a great job in this movie. And he gets to play two different versions of his character here that are wildly different, and he does a great job with that. So, the film is about Mickey Barnes. Mickey Barnes gets into some hot water with a buddy of his, and they deduce that the only way to get out of this pickle is to go on this big space expedition to another world, which is led by a politician who's taken a ton of people and they're going to go to a new planet. And he signs up to be an expendable, which is someone that gets reprinted every time they die. So the role is Mickey will do some very dangerous things, die, and then get reborn again the next day with all his memories intact. We go through an MLG montage of Mickey deaths where he has died on the job 16 times. You don't see all 16, but you see some of the big moments. And we follow Mickey number 17. And just like when the toilet paper rips when I'm wiping my asshole, a happy little accident happens to Mickey 17 where a Mickey 18 gets printed while he's still alive. Now there's two Mickeys. And the film, at its core, is a dark comedy. And I think it does pretty well in that regard. It is a well-written comedy. And as you would expect from a Bong Joon-ho film, there's plenty to unpack with it. There's a lot of metaphors and symbolism. But in that department, I feel this is his most straightforward film he's made. It's pretty on the nose with all of the things it wants to express to you, the viewer. And I feel like most people will be able to pick up on it pretty easily. I mean, I guess maybe. There's fucking people that think chocolate milk comes from brown cows. So, maybe not, but I think in terms of his entire catalog of films, Mickey 17 is the one that is the most straightforward in kind of like drilling and driving home the messaging pretty clearly for the most part. That's not to say all of it is, but overall, I think most people will be able to pick up on pretty much everything he wants to get across with it. Which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I wanted to mention it because following Parasite, I feel like a lot of people, and myself included admittedly, go into this movie expecting like really deep layers, like an onion you can never really get to the middle of. Like there's always tons of discussion you can have and a lot of like debate on what certain things meant. With Mickey 17, I don't really see that happening because it does feel like everything's very straightforward. Which, for some people, that might even be more of a positive thing. Maybe you didn't like to engage with his art to that level, like with Parasite. So maybe this would be more your speed, and I think that's fine. But I just wanted to mention it here. Now I want to get into like the actual complaints I have. This movie has a lot of characters in it. And a lot of the characters don't really go anywhere. They are there as a caricature of something that never, like, actually plays a role in anything, and by far the weakest part of this film, I think, is the ending. Really, the last, like, 25-ish minutes, I think, are just super fucking flat. It feels really rushed. I don't know what went wrong. Like, it really feels like that wasn't the original direction. It just feels like we gotta speedrun this, and it feels like they started cutting things out to get to that point. I'm not going to get into too big a... Well, I am going to get into some spoilers, but I'll give you a warning when I get to there. I just really think, like, the entire last 25 minutes just get really flat and fall into, like, a really kind of cliche, very rushed ending that almost felt like it was made for, like, a PG-13 family film type ending that I think really clashed with everything else the movie was setting up. I feel like that's probably a pretty hot take because it seems like a lot of people really do love everything about this movie. I just don't, unfortunately. I wish I did, but I'm just going to sit here and be honest with my thoughts on it. So another thing, as I mentioned, the movie is a dark comedy. A lot of Mickey's deaths are played off as a joke, and sometimes just used as a punchline when he gets his hand cut off and like the people are talking about it like they just watched a touchdown. They're like, whoa, did you guys see that? That was incredible stuff. His hand just fucking flew right off of him. And overall, I do think it works. But Mark Ruffalo's character, Kenneth Marshall, and his wife, by extension, these two are actual cartoon characters. When they are on screen, it is so over the top to the point that it feels like you're watching a Mad TV sketch. I swear to God, there's a scene where Mark Ruffalo is doing the Chris Farley van down by the river movements. Like, it is very clearly hamming it up to the upteenth degree. Which I do think could have worked if it wasn't so far removed from how every other character in the movie interacts with the world around them. Everyone else plays very silly things seriously. These two play everything silly. And I just don't think that it meshes super well. Kenneth Marshall is the political powerhouse, and his wife is kind of his, right hand, also kind of his handler. And together, every villain is lemons. Like, they are the evil duo. And his wife is just, like, her character can basically just be boiled down to one word: sauce. She says the word sauce more times than Amy Schumer says vagina. Every scene she's in, she's talking about sauce. Can you cut off some alien tails, maybe even torture them a little bit to help improve the flavor of my sauce? And the whole time she's like shaking a sauce. It just got so annoying, and I get there's a deeper meaning behind the sauce, but I was so tired of hearing from the fucking sauce sorceress just drone on and on about it. Now, there were some good scenes, though, with Kenneth Marshall. Mark Ruffalo was obviously channeling a Donald Trump impression for his whole performance as Kenneth Marshall, and there were some moments that I do think were really good scenes. But overall, these two characters, I felt like they were just so different from how everyone else in the movie was that it just felt like it just clashed with it. So I don't think it meshed overly well. Now I'm going to get into spoilers for some of my, bigger complaints, because even that I don't even think is that big of a deal. Like, they weren't bad by any means, it's just, it didn't work super well. Now, I'd really like to kind of dive into what I briefly mentioned at the beginning with the ending. I just really think the ending was very rushed. I don't like what they did with the aliens. They established the aliens very early on as these, sympathetic, cutesy creatures. They're making little squeaky sounds, and they are what saved Mickey 17 in the beginning and lead to this whole chaotic hootenanny that happens with two Mickeys existing at the same time. I don't want to just regurgitate the plot of the movie to you, but it's important that I mention this for what I'm about to talk about. The aliens do play a role at the end of the film again. They come back around. The two Mickeys are in jail, as well as the woman they're in love with, Nasha, who is also a security head on the ship. And Mickey 17 is explaining, why didn't the aliens just eat me? And Nasha just point blank explains to Mickey, as well as the audience, no, the aliens are the good guys. They were saving you. And he's like, oh, you're right, they saved me. Yeah, they're the good guys. And that kind of sets the stage for how the rest of the final act plays out, where they just explain everything to you. They just tell you everything. So she even has, like, a really good speech about how stupid Kenneth Marshall is, and, like, we're the aliens here, you dumb motherfucker. The aliens are the good guys. They just want their baby back that we're dangling over a fucking pit of lava. This and that. Like, explaining, the aliens are the good guys, we're the bad guys, kind of thing. And it's just all being hammered home pretty directly, and also there's a couple of, like, really big ass pull moments where, like, a scientist that we'd seen a couple of times throughout the film approaches Mickey 17 going, boop, 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 oh, boop, 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 and Mickey 17's like, boop, 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 boop. And she's like, yes, exactly. They speak a language. I'll make a translator. And then, like, 2 minutes later, she comes up to Mickey and is like, here's the translator I just made. And Mickey is able to use that translator to speak fluently, easily, with the aliens now, speaking to the mother of all the aliens, and they're just having this conversation back and forth. And it's like, what the fuck? What do you mean you just threw this together that quickly? Holy shit. So, like, they now have this translator out of nowhere, with, like, no setup or build up to it at all. They've just immediately mastered this language so they can communicate between the two of them. And I won't just, like, get into everything that happens at the end, but I just really felt like everything just rushed through the end. Like, there wasn't a whole lot left to, like, unpack, because they were just explaining, vomiting everything to you through the conversation with the aliens and each other about, like, it turns out there were some spies, amongst them that were analyzing all the bad stuff Kenneth was doing, and they were filming the whole thing. It's like, you're evil, you're out of line, you're offline, and they point guns at him, and now it's a mutiny. It's like everything just all of a sudden just starts happening. Like, okay, aliens are good guys, you were the bad guys, we know you're the bad guys, so now we're the good guys stepping in. And there's not a whole lot left to, like, dig into anymore. It's just now it just feels like the end to what I mentioned earlier, like a family film. Like, oh, these cute aliens, there's going to be a happy resolution there, and all the bad guys are going to get their justice, their just desserts. Great. And it's pretty simple. Now, maybe I'm a bumbling oaf who's, at the very end, just not picking up on any of the deeper meanings to a lot of what was happening. Like, at the very end, when it came to Mickey 17 and a certain button, there was absolutely a deeper meaning with a lot of the sequencing that happened there. I get that, but everything with the aliens and the way that they, get the bad guys, I felt just really was underwhelming and like really kind of rough. Another thing I want to mention, so many characters, and you're not going to give a fuck about any of them except for Mickey, and maybe Nasha. I imagine most people won't even remember a lot of the other characters' names, even though so many of them were thrown in for quite a few scenes, because it just never coalesces to anything with them. The reason I say maybe Nasha is because she doesn't get a whole lot of fleshing out throughout the film. She falls in love with Mickey at first sight. She invites him over to eat with her, and they just immediately fall in love. And it just kind of stays that way. Like, we don't get a whole lot about her. Like, we don't learn a lot about her. We know she's a badass, and especially at the end, she showcases that. And then when she does, like, deliver her speech about, like, how fucked up all of it is, that's, like, the first time we actually hear from her outside of just how much she loves Mickey and how much she's been there for Mickey. So, like, the only character that gets any real fleshing out is Mickey. Yet they introduce so many. So it just feels kind of messy to have all of these characters and just not give a fuck about most of them. You know what I mean? Like, there was a lot of interesting ideas that were explored and then just abandoned. Like, there was a lot of stuff they set up early on. Like, for instance, the technology for printing the expendables, that was developed by a fucking serial killer. And he'd use it as a way of having a pretty bulletproof alibi. And then, when eventually he was caught, it led to a huge discussion about, well, who's guilty? Are they both guilty? Because they're two separate people now, so, like, what exactly do you do? And, like, it was a really interesting idea, that doesn't go anywhere, and it doesn't really surface again past, like, the narrator explaining it. Like, Mickey is walking us through how we get to this point, and it's something that he briefly talks about, but it's never like a concept that they really go down in any big way. And I just felt like that would have been cool. Like, I feel like there was a lot of things that they started and then didn't finish. That would have been really cool had they had done that. You know what I mean? Anyway, though, I've been yapping about this for a while. I don't dislike the movie. I enjoyed it. I had fun watching it. But I do think it is Bong Joon-ho's weakest film so far. I would still recommend watching it. Like, it is a good movie. But yeah, I'm not going to pretend that I wasn't somewhat disappointed with it. That's really about it. So yeah. For close to a decade now, I have watched every Amy Schumer movie and every Amy Schumer stand-up special that gets released. Not because I am a fan. In fact, quite the opposite. I don't like Amy Schumer. I do not like Green Eggs and Ham. So then, why have I made it a tradition to watch every single new thing she puts out? That's like making hitting yourself in the head with a brick a tradition. Well, it's because sometimes in life, you have to do things you don't necessarily want to do, like growing up eating vegetables. Well, Miss Schumer is my vegetables. Does it make me healthier and stronger? Am I better for it? Absolutely not, really. It just kind of makes me unhappy. But I do this because I believe it's important that I do. This work I find to be crucial. In the words of John F. Kennedy, we choose to go to the moon and do the other things not because they are easy, but because they are hard. And I promise you there's nothing fucking harder than watching an Amy Schumer movie. She just released a new one. It's called Kinda Pregnant. It's on Netflix. It's not very good. Not the bravest take, not breaking new ground. I don't think anyone fell to their knees in surprise at my quick and dirty thoughts on it. Most people aren't really liking the movie. It's not being received overly well, which has become standard protocol for a Schumer production. But I'd still like to debrief on what I watched. It's therapeutic for me. It's very obvious. I'm not the target demographic for this movie. Kinda Pregnant is not a film that's aiming to make me happy and kick my legs up in my chair in excitement. I recognize that. So it's entirely possible that you or a loved one really enjoy this movie and completely disagree with me on my critique of it. But just know if that's the case, you're wrong for it. This movie's just not good, and I don't think achieves anything it sets out to do. I will say, though, her movies are significantly better than her stand-up. That's always kind of been the case. Not exactly the highest praise, I know that. That's like saying pee is better than piss. Kind of the same thing, but I imagine many of you haven't subjected yourself to the torture of watching a full Amy Schumer comedy set. Just take my word for this. It's one of those things where you finish it and you feel the need to go on Facebook to mark yourself safe. Like, you know, that shit after a tragic event where people, like to let their family know they're alive. That's how it feels to finish one of those. Finishing an Amy Schumer movie, however, is just exhausting. Was I entertained? No. Did I laugh? No. So what did I get out of it? Nothing. Just an hour and 40 down the tubes. That's really about it. So Kinda Pregnant has Amy Schumer as the lead role, Lainey. Lainey wants a family badly. She's always wanted to be a mother. But the relationship she's been in for 4 years ends abruptly when the guy asks for a threesome and then starts being like this playboy. He's like becomes like fucking Tony Stark, where he's got like 9 women following him at all times. So that falls apart, and now she's approaching 40, and well, she doesn't have a husband or anything, but she still wants to be a mom, and now her best friend just found out she's pregnant with her husband, and it makes Lainey really jealous. She then puts on a fake pregnancy tummy, and people assume she's pregnant. She doesn't correct them, and then she ends up making friends while still putting on the ruse of being pregnant. And then she even falls in love with someone who thinks she's pregnant, and now she's truly stuck because she has to keep up the facade, otherwise they're going to know that she's a liar and a weirdo for faking pregnancy for attention and friends in the first place. Now, an interesting twist on that concept is that she's only pretending to be pregnant half the time. So she fakes pregnancy with, like, one group of friends, but with her best friend, Kate, who's actually pregnant, she doesn't. And she's a middle school teacher, and she doesn't fake pregnancy there either. But she also told the other friend group that she's a teacher, so then sometimes they come and visit her at school, so then she'll take a balloon and stuff it under her shirt, so that way they'd be none the wiser. I'm not gonna bother yapping about the story that much, because who gives a fuck? It's really just there as a vessel to lead Amy into wacky, sticky situations with this mess she's found herself in. And that'd be fine if the scenes were amusing. Which, of course, was never in the cards, and I knew that when turning the movie on. Expecting an Amy Schumer movie to make you smile is like expecting salt water to not hurt your eyes. But with nothing else in the film, basically just being a bounce between one wacky scene to the next, it needs to hit on the comedy, and it doesn't. I will say, though, that there was a surprising lack of ma-vagina jokes, which Amy Schumer has become known for. That's her fucking bread and butter. Like, Amy Schumer and talking about pussy, that's spaghetti and meatballs right there. Now, of course, don't get me wrong. There is moments where she talks about her holes. In fact, she has a whole sequence dedicated to her mentioning all of her holes in a variety of ways. And there is still, of course, her talking about vagina. That's present, but in a lesser degree than it has been in her previous work. And that's because she has now delegated that role. She's kind of passed the torch to a different character in this movie, the guidance counselor that works with her at the school. I cannot remember that character's name, but it's a guidance counselor whose whole purpose in the film is just being very vulgar and over the top. You know, I just jerked off this alpaca and I put its cum in my macchiato. And she takes a swig of it, that kind of thing. And then she's talking about, like, you know, labia and all that. So it's still there, but it's just not always Amy Schumer being the instigator, which I found to be pretty interesting. Instead, Amy Schumer is focused on being really bombastic and, like, slapstick. So, like, the earliest attempts at comedy in this film are Amy Schumer walking up to her date and she stumbles. So she falls down like a stair and she's like, oh jeez, oh man. And then she comes up to a cake and fucking slams it because she thought there was going to be a wedding ring in it. So, and then she starts yelling and screaming like, you want a scene? Here's a scene. Rips off her dress, twirling it over her head. And that's kind of her comedy in the movie, is just being like really loud and becoming the center of attention. Like there's another scene where she's on a date with Will Forte, who becomes the main love interest. And he mentions there's a guy on the ice that's kind of ruining the ice, so she screams at him that he's going to get killed if he keeps doing it up. She's fucking yelling and screaming at him. And that's most of her jokes throughout the film. Now, of course, she has like the little quips, and she bounces off Will Forte for these quips. It doesn't work for me. Maybe someone out there will really enjoy the comedic stylings of Amy Schumer. Wasn't hitting for me. That was shitting, unfortunately. And one thing I found really interesting is that throughout the entire runtime of this film, I would imagine there is not a single scene that goes by without Lainey being present. I'm pretty sure across the entire hour 40 or however long the movie is, she is there for every fucking second of it. And it feels like every character in this movie is there solely to elevate her character, because she just steps all over them. Every character just feels like some kind of fucking, you know, like plyometric that she'll jump on top of in order to get like the joke in. So the most egregious example is her best friend Kate, the one who's actually present and then sends her down this spiral. Kate, she's not even a character. She's just kind of like a step stool for Lainey to plop herself on top of. Because every time Kate is in a scene, Lainey's there too, and then Lainey makes it all about herself and making her the spectacle of it. And it's not like, you know, that's the message, how Lainey's been selfish, like you're jealous of your friend's happiest moment, you know, having this baby. No, because the film doesn't actually give any consequences to Lainey for her lying and all of her dishonesty, and also the way that she like melted down in class. Like she started a fucking fire in the school because she was having like this big breakdown, and she's just in general a bad teacher from everything they show, but she doesn't get any consequences at all. She doesn't learn or grow. So that definitely isn't a message. It's just every time there is a scene with another character, Lainey will be there to ensure that that other character doesn't get to do anything. It has to be Amy Schumer being the full fucking focus at all times. It just felt really weird to me. It seems as though there was this almost spiteful decision made from the production staff. This was produced by Happy Madison. Adam Sandler is credited as one of the producers. And it almost feels like Adam Sandler was like, okay, so people don't like Amy Schumer? Well, how about a movie where it's Amy Schumer in every fucking scene? You don't like her? Well, you're gonna get her for every goddamn frame of this movie. It's like when, you know, your parents catch you smoking a cigarette and they're really disappointed. It's like, what are you doing? Okay, you like to smoke cigarettes? Well, here, you're gonna smoke the whole damn pack right now. You know, that kind of thing. It's just, it was so much Amy Schumer. And I know it's an Amy Schumer movie, but holy shit. It really, like, I can't think of a scene that happened that didn't have her in it and trying to take all of the attention away from all of the other characters. No character in this movie besides her has anything to do except for Will Forte's character Josh, whose only role is to love Amy unconditionally, immediately, and not care that she has completely deceived him from the very beginning, and he actually doesn't know anything about her because everything she has ever said to him basically is a fucking lie. And he's just supposed to be like a clapping seal that's okay with it because they fucked once. It's just, I don't know. I don't really understand what the movie was even trying to do, like, with the messaging of it or anything, if there even was one. Because it's not even a movie that celebrates pregnancy or anything. A lot of these slapstick jokes Amy plays is about how, you know, she's gonna, like, kill the baby and get an abortion, and she's, like, falling on her stomach all the time. So, like, there's panic ensuing. So there's not, like, even really anything beyond just giving you, like, wacky scenes that are supposed to make you laugh. But I just don't think the comedy hits, so I don't think many people will laugh at them. And judging by, like, most people's reception to it, it's not really hitting in any of the demographics, even outside of just, like, the fucking dumb idiot like me that'll sit down and watch it knowing full well he's not going to like it going into it. You know what I mean? Anyway, though, I'll stop ranting about it. What an extraordinary use of a bit of my Valentine's Day here watching Amy Schumer's Kinda Pregnant. So, just needed to vent about it. And, you know, I watch every Amy Schumer production, and I'll continue to do so. And maybe one day we will find gold. There will be an actual banger from Schumer. But that day has not come to pass yet, and it is not Kind of Pregnant. But who knows? Maybe it'll be the next one. That's really about it. So yeah. A few days ago, I made a solemn vow to all of you that I would do something. And by golly, I followed through. Lessermen wouldn't have. They would have tapped out and said, I can't handle that kind of torture. But not me. I watched Amelia Perez. Mostly. I turned it off towards the end. It sucks. It is turbo ass. It's just bad. Oscar nominations came out. Amelia Perez stuns the world, getting 13 nominations. That puts it on equal footing with Lord of the Rings: Return of the King. Let that sink in. Let that marinate. This movie, that I had not heard a single compliment from a living, breathing, sentient soul, outside, of course, the zombies, the fart-huffing homunculi in Hollywood, these pretentious weirdos that were singing its praises, constantly patting him on the back for a job well done with this artistic masterpiece, you know, fucking pinky up type shit. Anyone with a functioning frontal lobe that witnessed this disaster all had the same things to say about it. That it's trash. And so, I decided to check it out because I said I would. With all of these nominations, maybe there was something there that only my keen peepers could pick up on. There wasn't. There wasn't at all, actually. Now, I'm going to just talk about the movie itself. I'm going to refrain from talking about the circus that surrounded it with the director and pretty much everyone involved in the movie making a fucking fool of themselves. Like the director saying he didn't need to study Mexican culture, he knew all he needed to know. Also them saying that the reason they didn't hire any, like, Mexican leads for this movie is because they couldn't find people talented enough in Mexico, which is crazy statements across the board from the entire staff here. But go ahead and lock those in the toy chest. I'm not going to play with them today here. People have talked about that a lot. I'm just going to focus on the movie itself. If you can even call this a movie. It's more of like a social experiment on the human patience. Like, how much can you stomach before you just say enough is enough and turn it off? That is the one compliment I can give this movie, is that since it went to Netflix, you didn't have to pay for a ticket and go to a theater to see it. You just pay for the ever-increasing price for Netflix subscriptions and you get nuggets like this delivered to you, little fucking turd nuggets on a plate. So at least you have the option of easily turning it off. That's good. As far as I'm concerned, the best ending to Emilia Perez is the one I got, where I stopped it early. That's optimal. So you may have heard it been said by others that Emilia Perez is a musical made by people who have never heard music. That's very true. Now, before seeing this film, I did see a couple of very cringe clips. One of them being the very well-known clip now of the Sex Change Operations song. I don't know if I can play a clip from it here. I don't know Netflix's rules on that. So I'll just acapella it for you. Hello, very nice to meet you. I'd like to know about sex change operation. I see. From man to woman, woman to man, man to woman, penis to vagina. Is it for you? I mean, if that doesn't get your finger wiggling, I don't know what will. That musical number goes on for quite some time. It feels like a joke someone would make to insult musicals as a whole. That's how every musical sequence in this movie feels, honestly. Also, I did look it up. There are YouTubers that have put pieces of that musical number in there, so I'm going to do the same here so you can grade my performance a cappella versus the official. I'm going to say, I think I got him beat.
Hello, very nice to meet you. I'd like to know about sex change operation.
I see. Men to woman, or woman to men.
Man to woman.
From penis to vagina. Is it for you?
This is just one of many stinkers. There isn't a single good tune in the entire film. There's not even the semblance of something decent. Like, the DNA of music is not even there. It really does feel like this is made by people who have never even heard a song. Maybe, like, Happy Birthday at some point in their life, but beyond that, nothing. Every single musical number comes out of nowhere, too. Like a fucking groin shot, Johnny Cage style. You'll be watching the movie, not entertained, obviously, and then it's going to get even worse because in the middle of this conversation, out of nowhere, it breaks into, like, a pseudo-musical where they introduce maybe, like, one light instrument in the back, and then the character starts whispering melodically. It's stupid. I just fucking either do, like, a whole musical number or just don't bother, because that's just weird and silly and annoying. But also, to the team that made this, just don't do musicals ever again because you're bad at it. A lot of these musicals, honestly, like, it doesn't even sound like you're listening to instruments sometimes. It really does feel like they just went in and winged it with whatever they found on set that day, like starting, banging on the catering table or slamming two plates together to get, like, the sound of shattering plates going. And then the characters don't really even sing most of the time. They're mainly just speaking weirdly. So, like, a conversation with Rita and another doctor. She's like, change the soul, change society, change the soul society. The soul society is at risk because Ichigo is no longer a Shinigami. It goes in all these weird directions where they're not singing and they're not talking. They exist in the dimension in between. They're tap dancing on the line of insanity, and it is miserable to listen to. It's like another conversation, we'll stick with the same one. In that same conversation with the doctor, which is like a musical the entire time, it really loosey-goosey nomenclature here, calling it a musical. But Goober sounds like he's, about to pass out from Xanax or something. Like, the way he's delivered, it's like they tried to reinvent singing, and they couldn't do it, because you can't reinvent that. Like, there's notes you should be hitting, and there's ways that singing is that you just can't really change the foundations of, but they certainly challenged it. So Goober just starts breaking out into it. Lady, I only fix the body, I don't fix the soul. Your Mr. Mystery better change his mind, change his ID. And then she'll come in and, like, try and duet with it, but they don't mesh, and they also don't, like, conflict well, so, like, the battle doesn't work. So she comes in, you better change your mind, you better change your mind. Like, it sucks. Like, nothing about the musicals work. And that's the whole focal point of this film. And every statement it tries to make on, like, hot button issues just falls so fucking flat. It's very clear that this is a film that had one target demographic, and that's out-of-touch Hollywood weirdos that love to jerk each other off about how in touch they are and how refined their palette is. It is the textbook definition of Oscar bait, and I can really see why so many people hate this movie. It's also extremely shallow. It doesn't make any strong statements on anything at all, and I really do get why, in Mexico in particular, people hate this movie. Because it boils down their entire culture to just being drug cartel. That's it. It is laser focused on trying to tap into the degenerate evil brain of the Hollywood elite. And it successfully has done it, clearly. 13 Oscar nominations. It is truly just for that weirdo groups that love to shake each other's hands and put each other up on pedestals because they like irredeemable dog shit that they think is deep when it's not. And I have no doubt that they think that by enjoying this film, they're in touch and socially conscious of things. I can already just picture it now. Oh, yes, Emilia Perez, one of the finest films ever directed. A lot of Philistines couldn't appreciate the genius of Jacques Audiard. Not like I could. I found a new appreciation for Mexican culture thanks to Emilia Perez. I even had my private chef whip up tamales last night to celebrate. Even been learning the language. Spanish is beautiful. Donde está la biblioteca? Buenos noches. Impressive, I know. Gracias. Like, it's just the people that have nominated this pile of doo-doo, this fucking winky. I'm fucking malfunctioning trying to find other ways of insulting this movie. But the fact it's nominated for 13 Oscars blows my fucking mind. Like, it tries to tackle a lot of like hot button topics, but it doesn't tackle them. It doesn't tackle anything except your patience as a viewer. It doesn't make statements on anything. It's not deep. It's beyond shallow. The director and everyone who worked on this movie had absolutely not a single moment of reflection when making it where they thought, hey, maybe we should like actually try and do something here. The only goal in mind is how can we try and tick all of the boxes to get Oscar nominations. That's the only thing they did. The movie is a failure on all possible fronts. It's a bad movie. It's a bad story. The characters are bad. The music is really bad, and there's a lot of music. Like, everything about the movie is a catastrophe. It is no surprise to me now why everybody who has seen this movie does not like it. Just point blank, they do not like it. Like, I haven't even really got into, like, the story at all. I've been just talking about, like, in broad strokes here. The story is super fucking stupid. I don't even know if it's worth diving into. I feel like I've already ranted about this enough. There is not anything about this movie that I think is, like, good or worth watching. I will say, like, if I had to really scrap, like pick at morsels for something nice to say about it, there's a couple of set pieces during, like, a dance or two where I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. I guess, like, a couple of shots where it, like, almost worked if the music wasn't so shitty. But other than that, there's just nothing here. Like, and that's really scraping the bottom of the barrel for a compliment. It's... Not only should this not have been nominated for 13 Oscars, it shouldn't have been nominated for anything more than a Razzie. It's a bad movie. Like, it's just not good. It's not like a average movie somehow makes a miracle run at the Oscars for 13 nominations. No, like, there is just no real explanation for why this film is nominated at all, let alone this many times. And it also, like, did extremely well at the Golden Globes. Inexplicably, it's probably going to do really well at the Oscars, even though it shouldn't even be there. I don't get it. And now that I've watched it and then turned it off, I can say that it's just not very good. That's about it. See ya.